Welcome to another edition of Green is Good, and I'm John Shigarian, and I've got Matt Jacobson with us today. He's the Executive Director of the Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative. Welcome to Green is Good, Matt.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, John. I appreciate it very much.
Hey, you know, Matt, before we get talking about the Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative and lobsters, which since I'm a kid is one of my favorite foods on the planet, I want you to share with our listeners, please, the Matt Jacobson story and share a little bit about your history and background.
Oh, goodness. Well, I graduated from the United States Naval Academy, and I flew airplanes for a while.
Wait a second. You were a Top Gun. Like you're a humble man. Talk a little bit about, if I was a Top Gun, I'd spend more than I just flew airplanes in a little while. Just, tell how cool was that? How cool was
that? It was a great job. I was a special operations C-130 pilot, and got to spend a lot of time low level in a big airplane and dropping stuff out the back and picking people up. It was great fun.
Awesome.
I got to see
You're an American hero.
Africa. Oh, I don't know about that. I got paid to do something I wanted to do since I was a little boy, so nothing heroic in that, but it was great fun.
Awesome. Great. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So anyway, I flew airplanes for a while, got out, and went to work for the railroad industry. And I worked at CSX for a while, and then I had an opportunity to run a small railroad here in Maine that ran from Portland up to Montreal Freight Railroad. And we did a pretty good job with that, and I got a chance to run international marketing in the intermodal side, the containerized freight for the Canadian National Railroad. And did that for, 5 or 6 years, and had a great run. And my wife and I adopted our little boy and decided we wanted to move back to Maine and not stay in Chicago anymore. Not there's anything wrong with Chicago, but we wanted to come back home to raise our family, and so we came home, and I got to run something called Maine Company, which is a privately funded agency that tries to recruit businesses to Maine. And we had a decent run at that, and we recruited Carbonite and NotifyMD and a few other companies, athenahealth and Boston Financial Data Services. And I got frustrated at how hard that was, so I ran for governor. And it turns out that I'm better at other things than I am running for governor, and I got crushed. So that was fun. And then I worked for a startup data center for a while, and we got bought by a big internet provider, and then I landed here.
Wonderful. So that's no, that's amazing. And, it's so funny. I mean, I'm 52 years old, Matt, and I've never met a real-life Top Gun guy or never even had a relationship, had a phone conversation with. And just this year, in 2015, I've met 2 Top Gun guys. I mean, so I don't know what's going on, but this is a good sign in my life. I like to have people I know that are Top Gun guys like you guys.
Yeah. And maybe there's more of us. There's been some training here lately.
Real American heroes. But it's so interesting that, the show today, the Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative and Green is Good. People don't understand there's a massive nexus between lobsters and sustainability, and that's what I'm so excited to share today with our listeners. And please start with just Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative. What is the Maine Marketing Lobster Collaborative? And then we'll get into the whole lobster sustainability nexus.
Sure. Well, so I don't know, two or 3 or 4 years ago, the lobster catch was early in the season, which meant that the lobster fishery, the Canadians catch, sort of the first 6 months of the year, and then the Americans catch the second 6 months, and that's just how the industry grew up. There's no law around that. That's just how it works, and so the different supplies come online at different times, and ours a couple of years ago came on early. And so there wasn't capacity for the value-added piece. So we had this glut of lobster on the market and no way to get it to a facility that could process it for us. So the bottom fell out of the price. And so the Lobster Collaborative really grew out of that crisis, this notion of what do we do to sustain ourselves, and really for me the overriding notion is that sustainability is certainly biological, but it's also a biographical term, and we were in danger of losing lobstermen and fishing villages and everything that community represents in our state. And so this became a really significant initiative for us, not only to be able to find a home for the lobsters, but to make sure that our lobstermen had homes. And that's really the start, the genesis of the organization.
Gotcha. And I'm on your site right now. For our listeners that want to follow along, they could go to www.lobsterfrommaine.com. Lobsterfrommaine.com. So MLMC, Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative, was formed then. And so talk a little bit about sustainability then being one of the key pillars of the Maine lobster industry. And that's why we had you on the show today to talk about sustainability, Maine lobster, and how that's really one of the founding principles.
Well, it is, and it's interesting, and you can imagine a Maine lobsterman, and they're sort of crusty and salty, and all the sort of the caricature, and they're all that and more. Certainly colorful guys and women. But what's interesting to me is that this industry grew up with a conservation sustainability pillar, like you said. The first laws on the books in Maine around sustainability were in 1874. And that was a minimum size. And so very early on, it was clear to the lobster industry here in Maine, 1870s, that, if you take the small ones out, you're taking your feedstock. So that was codified back then. And over time, there's now a maximum size because we recognize that the bigger the lobster, the more they breed. So if it's too small, we throw it back, and each one is hand measured at the trap. So the trap is raised, and they reach in and pull out the lobsters, and they have a gauge that measures how big they are. And if they're too small, they go back in. It's about 3 inches, and if they're too big, they go back in about 5 inches from the top, pretty much the length of the body. And they throw them back. They also, if they catch a female that has eggs, not only do they throw it back, but before they do, they notch the tail. They cut a little V in the tail, and then the next time a lobsterman catches that female, if there's a V in it, they know that it's an egg-bearing female, and they throw it back. So all these are all voluntary measures that grew up around the lobster industry, with the notion that if we take everything and we vacuum the bottom, it won't work. And then over time, they've added different rules. One of the things that got to be a problem several years ago was this notion of ghost traps. And that's when a trap gets cut off a buoy. Either a boat hits it or the line breaks or whatever, and it ends up on the bottom. And so they have biodegradable escape hatches in the lobster pots themselves that once they're underwater for a while disintegrate, so the lobsters can get in and out. And so just every time something comes up, the industry itself handles it. And it's interesting, and I know I'm rambling here, but it's interesting. One of the observations was made at the Lima Accords here just a couple months ago. Down in Peru, and they said that maybe the way Maine lobstermen organize themselves, we have 7 zones up and down the coast, and they're all voluntary, and in those zones they have individual regulations and rules, and they're mostly around sustainability and making sure that they're doing it right, and they're self-governing, and they think the folks at Lima said maybe that's a model for the rest of the world, this bottom-up approach rather than a top-down. Certainly worked for us.
And it's not just been since, sustainability has been cool. This is 150 years of practices.
Well, exactly. And you'll see the lobstermen will actually turn their nose up a little bit at some of the local fads, around it and talk about, we've been doing this since before it was cool. But again, it gets back to that notion that sustainability is not just biologic, but it's also biographic. And that, I think that's an overriding principle for us.
Matt, how does that fit into your marketing? Obviously, so much of what you have to do is, just by name and by is Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative. So if you're marketing them, how much do you use the sustainability part of the story as in part of your marketing plan?
It's absolutely fundamental. I mean, it's one of the 2 or 3 pillars. I mean, we think the Maine new sale lobsters taste better, and so that's going to be a pillar. We think these guys that catch it have amazing stories, and that's going to be a pillar. And the third pillar is the notion that we're doing it right and have done for a while. And the reason why that's important, not just because it makes us feel good, and it does. I mean, we think that we're doing it right. But we hear back in the market that's what people are demanding. They want to know where the food comes from. They want to know how it's caught. They want to know who caught it. They want to make sure. And we're hearing this from chefs. We're hearing it from consumers. And so we're really optimistic that we think we have this great story to tell. The fact that we're not vacuuming the bottom. We're not factories at sea. We catch each one by hand. It's 6,000 independent harvesters that are out there doing it right. That story has a ton of resonance to our target market, which is upscale casual restaurants, around the country.
Interesting. For our listeners who just joined us, we're so excited to have with us today Matt Jacobson. He's the executive director of the Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative. You can learn more about all the great work Matt's doing there at www.lobsterfrommaine.com. You talked about the chefs. So how do you market to chefs now across America with regards to Maine lobster? And who's your major competition? I don't know anything about lobster except I love it and it tastes amazing, and fresh lobster is just incredible. Talk a little bit about who your competition is and how you then differentiate yourself using sustainability and the great biographical story that you have to convince chefs and other food service professionals to buy Maine lobsters.
Yeah, it's a great question. For competition, go to a restaurant, right, and look on the menu. Right. What else could you have? It's really any other protein that's competing for center of the plate, or even appetizers or ingredients into other dishes. So it's the good thing for chefs, and one of the things that we've found is that sustainability story has real value to them. If you can add this protein with provenance, if you will, onto your menu, and then train your servers about how it's caught and why those things are important. Now, not only are you selling dinner, but you're selling information, you're selling provenance, you're selling sustainability, and all of those things matter to your customers. And especially at the kind of restaurants that we're targeting, the customers are demanding this. They want to know, where it's from, and it's beyond just, everybody's using, locally sourced, right? But now the questions are deeper. Well, tell me about locally sourced. By whom? What did they do? How do they use it? The fact that the waters in Maine, are as pristine as can be, and we have these 6,000 harvesters who are very concerned about the water quality, and we can tell those kinds of stories. They're very concerned about development along the coast, and we can tell that story. Well, all of this adds value to the chef in his restaurant because now he has a conversation. It's not just a scallop or a shrimp. It's actually a Maine lobster with this provenance and these interesting stories. The customers are paying more for that, and that's the value add.
And what other competition besides being competing against other proteins? Where do other lobsters come from? I'm even unfamiliar with that kind of stuff. Who else are you competing against?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, the Canadian lobsters are primarily hard shells. And so there's a different. We catch hard shells too in our off season, but in our high season, the soft shell lobster. One chef put it a couple of weeks ago, and I love this term. He said the soft shell is more lobstery. It just has a better, sweeter, more lobstery flavor to it. So only Maine catches those kinds of lobsters. There are others from around the world. I think the Australians have a product they call lobster that's very different. There's a Caribbean lobster that has no claws. But there's lots of different substitutes that they call lobster, but nothing like Maine lobster.
That's so interesting. That is just so interesting. So what else in terms of when you took on this role, was sustainability being focused on at the Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative at all in terms of their marketing, or did you make their biography and their sustainability foundation really the front and center? Was that a group decision? Was that your decision? Or is it already being done but just never together until that crisis hit?
Yeah. I think, it's certainly a group decision. It was a pillar for me. My interest is is about Maine, right? And in my background before,
Yeah.
it's about how do we grow Maine? How do we make this a sustainable place?
Right.
We've had for hundreds of years a demographic problem where our young people leave, and we are the oldest state in the country, so sustaining the economy here is a significant problem. And
right.
so that's always been an issue for me, and I have friends that are lobstermen, and we enjoy the villages, and one of the reasons why we moved back was because we enjoy that scene and the fact that there are lobstermen that go out, that there is a working waterfront, all those kinds of notions. So that was very important to me when I took the job. So I've been an advocate of that, tying the biology to the biography, since I got here, and of course we've hired an advertising agency to help us, a company called Weber Shandwick, and they are all over it. They get it, they see the value add, and so they've just taken that to the next step for us. So so it's certainly a group decision, but one with a lot of passion from me. I'm very much an advocate of it. It's our sustainable piece. It's our value add, and now that it's so hot in the market and that people are willing to listen to it and care about it, it really fits for us right now.
It's great timing. It's just perfect. That's really a sustainability. Yeah, that's so interesting.
It is. And I think shows like this are indicators, not only leaders, but indicators that this notion is one that I think has some legs, and it really matters to people, and it's great. It's a really good thing. It's going to reward people that are doing it right in the marketplace, and that's the best way to affect change in my book.
And, you see all these exposés. I just recently watched one this week on HBO on Vice on different industries with regards to fishing. And we've had other guests on the show talking about how we've overfished different regions of the world and different types of fish. So what I've learned here today, and our listeners are hearing from you, Matt, is really because of 150 years of making sustainability a DNA and cultural issue, the Maine lobster is one of the not overfished type of products in the world, seafoods in the world. It's actually a sustainable product that hasn't been destroyed or overfished because of all the practices that have been instituted for 150 years. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it really is. We don't we have the same number of lobster licenses every year, and we don't grow that even though so we limit who can fish, and there's an apprenticeship program, so you have to learn how these licenses can't be traded. So you have your license, but once you retire, you don't get to give it to somebody else. Somebody has to go through the program, so that teaches the rules. You can't aggregate them, so you can't buy 15 or 20 licenses. So it's a lot of the rules that grew up around this fishery were I don't know what the original motivations were, but certainly today they really serve to protect our fishery from sort of a factory mentality where somebody might invent new technology. We purposely keep the traps the way they are, and they're not terribly efficient. But we keep them the way they are because it adds to that sustainability of the fishery. So, we're not vacuuming the bottom. We're making sure we protecting the young ones, the breeders, those sorts of things. And it all grew up, over hundreds of years. So I think that gives us, it's so different. It's not a fad here. It's something that we've done for a long time and we'll continue to do.
Well, Matt, since, obviously we're down to the last 2 minutes or so, unfortunately, but, obviously, sustainability is something that's both cultural and part of the DNA of the lobster industry of Maine and of also the Matt Jacobson family. Talk a little bit about what you do in your own personal family to have a sustainable lifestyle in the Matt Jacobson household.
Well, my kids are school age, so we recycle everything right here from my 9-year-old in a big way. And my wife is an ER physician, and so she spends in a couple of different hospitals far away. So we decided to buy a Prius as a result of that. So she's scooting around in her Prius. Although my son did put a NASCAR sticker on the back, so might be the only Prius in the country with a 3 sticker on the back. But that's okay. It's all good. But it's those kinds of things matter to us personally.
That's awesome.
And my taking this job was a big part of that for our family. Was what can we do with some of the skill sets that I've developed to help sustain this fishery and get these folks rewarded for the good work they do.
That's awesome. Well, Matt, thank you for coming on the show today. And to learn more about all the great work Matt's doing at the Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative, go to www.lobsterfrommaine.com and eat Maine lobsters. Thank you, Matt, for being a Maine lobster and sustainability superstar. You are truly living proof that green is good.